Morning, everyone. I hope you are all enjoying Tableau Conference 2018 so far and enjoying your sunny time in London. Today is a really important moment. We will be covering a really important topic at Tableau, deploying Tableau as a service. Before we get started, Sebastian and myself are going to introduce ourselves. So my name is Florian Mottay. I'm a solution architect as part of EMEA Professional Services team. My job is quite easy to describe. I'm basically on a mission to help people to be successful with Tableau and to get maximum value from it. I will be honest with you. I didn't volunteer to be present and to present this session. One day, a few months ago, I received an email from someone asking me to present this session. And I had to accept it. Here we are. So I received basically a short email asking me, Florian, can you do present this session? And I say, OK. And it was from someone that was not supposed to present any topic at TC this year. This person is Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Florian, for the kindly introduction. That was really a bit of a weird story, but let's start from the beginning. My name is Sebastian, and I'm working as a principal solution architect since nearly 3.5 years in our global services team at Tableau. And trust me, I did extensively a lot of presentations throughout the last years. Yeah? And therefore, I decided when it came to the application process for presentations at TC Europe in London this year, I said, I think now it's the right time to relax, to step back a bit. Yeah? And yeah, see what happened. 4 weeks ago, I received a call from the co-speaker, from Florian, and he had to decline the attendance for this TC Europe this year due to an urgent customer request. And what should I say? Welcome back on stage, Sebastian.
Before we start, I will have to inform you there will be no subtitle for this session. So I'm very sorry in advance for the French accent. Let's get started. So what are the key objectives of the session? Key objective of the session is to understand what does self-service analytics in the Tableau's world. The second one will be around what are the key areas for IT to focus on to be successful in deploying Tableau as a service. We will finally have a concrete example of how Tableau looks like. And finally, we will provide you some best practices to avoid common traps in your Tableau journey. In terms of agenda, we will talk about analytics for everyone. We will then talk about people, process, platform as a framework we are using internally to support our customer on a daily basis. Finally, we will see how IT role is really important to be successful in deploying Tableau as a service, and what are the key duties for IT. And then Sebastian will be talking about what is coming next with Tableau, and this is pretty exciting. And we will finally have a Q&A session to get the chance for you to ask any question you have, and we'll spend a lot of time to cover and answer you as much as we can. Analytics for everyone. This is the place we want to go. This is where you should be, okay? But when you think about it, years ago, we were talking about Tableau as a BI tool, enabling key users to deliver insightful dashboard. Today, we are talking about Tableau as a modern analytics and BI platform enabled by IT to provide analytic content development to your people. This is the key change. But do you think this is the only thing that is important to have a data-driven decision-making culture within your company? This is not the only thing. You need to have the right platform, but you also need to make sure that all the people working in your company has access to the data. So you need to bring all the data they need to be successful in their job on a day-to-day basis. And the last one, you have the right platform, you have the data, but you still need to enable your people. You need to make sure that your people understand their data, but they also skill and understand how to best use Tableau. This component will make you successful as a data-driven, decision-making company. This quote is summarizing one of the key principles of bringing this culture within your company. Let people do what they do best, and everyone's winning. What do we mean behind that? We mean let business get the data, and let the IT enable business users to have access to the data. Okay. For which reason would you analyze data that will tell a story that you won't even understand? It doesn't make sense. Okay. This approach sounds sensible, reasonable, but it's really important. So, key takeaway, give the business data, okay? And let the IT give the business data. People, process, platform. This is a framework we are using internally at Tableau with our customer to make sure that we are covering all the ingredients to be successful with Tableau. As you can see, this wheel is classifying the key topics that need to be covered, okay? And we are classifying all the different areas into 3 categories: people, gathering, strategy, education, support, community. Process, we will be talking about governance, security, and automation. And finally, platform. We talk about infrastructure. But even before infrastructure, we will be talking about architecture and data. Okay. All these ingredients, all these different topics has to be managed, has to be discussed between the IT and the business in order to be successful with Tableau. If we start with people, we talk about strategy. Becoming a data-driven organization and deploying a self-service analytics platform, it's a strategic decision. Okay. It's something that is important, that will require investment in time, investment in money. So first of all, you need to understand where you are today, how your people are consuming the information you are providing to them, how you're working, just where you are. And you also need to understand where you want to be. Okay. Here we are talking about the famous as-is versus to-be. Once you know where you are and you know where you need to go, you need to have executive sponsorship, because that's the only way you will get things happening. So you need to have strong sponsorship on the way you're going to change a company. Change is hard because the human being, by nature, is really resilient to change. So the key outcome of this specific work package, I will say, is really to have a clear roadmap, a clear vision of where you should be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The second one is education. This is the best chance for you to get people on board in the new way of working together. So when we talk about education, we talk about educating people to understand their data, educating people on how to use Tableau and to get maximum value or business value from Tableau. To do that, we are offering a lot of different Tableau training. We have Tableau doctor session as we are during the conference. And it's not only about how to use Tableau, it's all about what are the key best practices to put in place. You can have the best and most beautiful dashboard ever. If it takes 2 minutes to open it, it's pointless. So it's all about best practice visually, but also in terms of performance. Community. How, when you start to have the first Tableau champions within your company, how can you enable larger audience within your company to use Tableau, to really understand where you want to go and why, most importantly, why you want to be in this position. So community is really, really important. So you can organize a lot of different things to make things happening and to really put in place the change you want to see. You can have specific workshop. You can have internal competition. You can schedule a Tableau days. For example, I did that last week for a charity. So we were with another company trying to get data from a specific topic, and we tried to build all together one specific dashboard. So that's all the things. And the key outcome of building a community is really to spread across the organization the new culture, this self-service analytics culture. process and platform. Today we'll be talking about infrastructure. You will have to define what are the key components you want to have in your infrastructure and what will be the relationship between these components, where you will get the data, etc., etc. So even before talking about infrastructure, you will have to design everything. And this design step, it's architecture. So you will have to understand how everything will work together and communicate each other. You will also have to think about, once you get infrastructure, you will have to monitor how this infrastructure is behaving across time. What the results you get from a performance point of view. Sebastian will be talking later on the governance. The key outcome of governance is basically to put in place clear processes. How you people are going to work together between the IT and the business. How will you manage the licensing? How will you manage the content you are creating and publishing across your platform to share with your people? Security. Let's talk about 3 levels of security. The first one is, we will have access to the platform. We will have access to the service. What authentication method are you going to use? But when you get access to the platform, which content you should see? That's the second level, content permission. And after you have access to specific visualization or specific dashboard that has been created, which data should you have access to? That's what we call internally row-level security. That's the 3 levels that need to be put in place. Okay. The outcome is really to get a safe and secure environment for everybody to be able to work together. Data. What will be the data source strategy? How are you going to use extract? How are you going to go live? How you are going to document your data as long as you are collecting more and more data within your company. You will have to document them. The key things you need to get from this work package is to get people, and when I say people, it's business and IT, to be confident with the data they are using. We will go in detail all these different aspects in the coming section. We won't spend a lot of time on the people because there is a dedicated session this afternoon by Andrew and Rafat about how to create a center of excellence with Tableau. So we'll be focusing on infrastructure governance, security, and data. What did I say before? I say, let people do what they do best. Who is the best to set up the infrastructure? Who is the best to provide you Tableau as the IT services? It's the IT. But the IT should not be alone to do that, because there is no IT deployment without business meaning. So IT stakeholders, we still have to work closely with the business to understand how the service should work, how much the service should be available, what are the rules and the constraints we will have from a business perspective. So it's all about finding the good compromise between what are the business requirements and what is possible to do from a technical perspective. Infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, there is a way we can measure how successful the infrastructure can be. Your infrastructure will have to be scalable, performant, available, and up to date. When we talk about scalability in Tableau, there is 2 ways we can do it. You can decide to scale up, meaning you will start with a primary node and you will start to add more resources. When I say resources, it's hardware resources, more CPU, more RAM, etc., etc. And by doing that, you will be able to run more services and more process within your Tableau server. The second way is scaling out, meaning you will start with the basic configuration and you will start adding extra nodes. So you start with the primary node, start adding worker node 1, worker node 2, to increase all the service you are providing and to have much more instance of services as part of your Tableau cluster. That's the 2 main ways when we talk about scalability. Your infrastructure will have to be performant. Tableau server will have to be performant. One of the key best practices was the key guideline we are providing to you today. It's when you use resources, it has to be dedicated resources. When we start talking about installing and deploying Tableau in a virtualized environment, virtual environment, you will have to make sure that all the resources are dedicated to Tableau server. So the concept of CPU pooling, dynamic RAM, it's not something we will be really supporting. The second one is stick to the recommendation we are providing to you. We are providing, everything is online, stick to them, because that's the best way you can be successful and avoid any frustration you can get from the business user not having the right response time. And the last point, we will have one specific slide just for that. This is a key takeaway on the infrastructure. Always adapt configuration to usage. Availability. So again, there is flexibility and different way to put in place availability with Tableau. The first one is high availability configuration. What are we talking about? We are talking about having a primary node and worker 1, worker 2. To reach high availability with Tableau, you need a minimum of 3 nodes. That's the minimum you need. On top of that, as a best practice, you will have to have a backup primary and to use external load balancer. These are the best practice we are providing. Okay. Why are we doing that? Again, we are doing that for the business. We are doing that to make sure that the business will be able at any point of time to access the platform and to access the service. So in this case, if the worker 1 is going down, all the workload, the platform will still work because all the workload will be transferred to the worker 2. This is how we are configuring high availability in Tableau. The second one is disaster recovery configuration. Again, you have a production node. Everybody starts consuming information on the platform as a service. Production node is going down. You need to have a backup plan. You need to understand how you're going to recover from having this server production node going down. That is why you will have a recovery node. And you will do the synchronization between the 2 nodes using backups and synchronization. And obviously, you will have to use a non-production environment for disaster recovery. Up to date. I had a client in France last week asking me, we are all using Tableau 10.4. Should we upgrade to 2018.1? And the clear answer is, yes, you have to do it. Why? Because every single release from Tableau, you get increase in performance. But this is not the only reason. We are offering more and more capabilities, and you need to make sure that you are managing the change with your people. What if your people are using 10.4 and you have new capabilities, of course, in the 2018.1? You are missing the chance for them to see how this new capability can help them and to find a concrete use cases. So it's really important that you get people. But you should not do that very quickly. It has to be properly planned. To summarize this specific upgrade, you need to agree upgrade pace with the business. What will be the frequency during the year? You need to plan. You need to resource and communicate when and how long the platform will be down while we are doing the upgrade. You need to keep desktop and server aligned as much as possible. This has been really important, for example, when we moved to 10.4 to 10.5 with the new data extract file format from TDE to Hyper. And the second one is using a non-production environment to perform upgrade testing. And when we talk about upgrade testing, it's basically non-regression testing to make sure that all the performance you have with your dashboard today will stay the same even after the upgrade. The most popular and question we get from our customer is there one configuration that is working everywhere? The answer is no. There is no clear configuration. You have to find the right configuration that will suit your needs. A configuration is driven by what is the complexity of the dashboard you are using? Are you using extract? Are you using live connection? How many concurrent users? All these parameters are driving how you're going to size and how you're going to scale up, scale out, or both of it. So how you do that? You gather information. You gather data. How my server is behaving. How performant is my infrastructure across time. Once you get this information, you analyze and monitor. And then you adapt proactively your configuration based on your new requirement. You're going to ask me, how can I do that? Once again, Tableau can provide you a lot of flexibility and a lot of tools to do so. You have Tableau repository to monitor service traffic. How many people are viewing a specific dashboard on a weekly basis, etc., etc. You can use Tabmon to monitor resource utilization. How much CPU, RAM am I using overnight, during the day? Tabjolt, another tool supported by Tableau, where you can perform and automate load testing. You don't really want to test. Today you have 50 users. You don't really want to test in production how your infrastructure will behave if you move from 50 users to 200. You want to proactively doing this load testing before you go live. So this is really important to have the right tool set to do so. And finally, log sharks that will help you to analyze all the logs that are generated and available from the Tableau server. I know there is a lot of tools, a lot of things you probably don't know yet. You will have access to all the material in the end of the session, and on top of that, in appendix, you have one slide dedicated that is providing to you all the useful links to get more and more information about it. We talk a lot about theory. Let's take a concrete example. How at Tableau are we using Tableau? What we call internally Halpo. Halpo, in a nutshell, we have 1.6 million views per month. We are talking about almost 200 cores across all the servers we have in the different countries. And we have more than 2,000 active desktop users. Just to emphasize the fact that we are talking about a large deployment, and most importantly, a worldwide deployment. We have servers in Singapore, in Seattle, in London. We have a lot of data sources we are connecting to, and we are all gathering and centralizing information in the data warehouse, and then we are distributing the data across the different servers. Let's take a look at one example, US-based production server. We'll call it instance A. As you can see here, we have 6 nodes, including the primary node, 16 core each for a total of 96 core. This configuration is a demonstration, is a concrete example how we can scale up and scale out, because we scale up from 8 to 16. And after that, we decided to add additional loads. But on top of adding additional nodes, we also have dedicated nodes just to cover specific tasks. For example, here, the backgrounder process, who is in charge of refreshing, extract, and managing all the alert and subscription with Tableau server. We were talking about Tabmon. Tabmon is a tool that can be used to monitor resource utilization within your Tableau server. This is an example of the result you can get from Tableau. All the monitoring tools we provide to you, Logshark, Tabmon, Tabjolt, they are all using Tableau to analyze Tableau. And this is the result we can get, for example. As you can see, we have the 3 first nodes dedicated to user experience, vSQL server, to make sure that everybody will have best experience as possible using the different dashboard and connecting to the Tableau server. And the 3 last nodes are really dedicated to backgrounder process. Imagine 1 second if we didn't have this node dedicated to refreshing extract, managing alerts and subscription. All the workload will be balanced on 3 first nodes. This is why it's important to always be on top of how you're using your Tableau server, how many users. Finally, our failover approach. For every Tableau server installation we have in London, in Singapore, or in US, we have the same approach. We are performing automatic backup during the night, and for each instance, we have the main Tableau server cluster A. And for each one, we have exactly the same installation with the same configuration, instance B. Why are we doing that? Because in case of the server cluster A is going down, we always have the latest content available on the instance B. And we are deploying that in London, on the dev environment, in Singapore, everywhere. This is the approach we are using.
Thank you, Florian, for walking us through a really important topic when it comes to deploying Tableau as an IT service. Another real cool IT topic is governance. And when you hear governance in the context of Tableau, your first reaction might be like this little baby here, and you ask, governance, why? And the simple answer on that is that self-service doesn't need to mean chaos. That's why we want within this section to learn more about typical governance areas, like content workflows, which means separation of non-productive content from productive content. We want to talk about ongoing content management and housekeeping processes, security and auditing options, as well as license management and the proper data strategy. A very common question I always get asked from customers, typically at the beginning of Tableau projects, is how does my content promotion process looks like? How should I separate non-productive content from productive content in a self-service environment? When we look back in the IT history, and even in the context of BI projects, we often see the classic IT waterfall approach, which is definitely appropriate when we talk about planning and delivering software development projects. However, my experience is that in the context of analytics, this approach is way too complex and way too time-consuming. Tableau's easy answer on that is to set up two separate areas on Tableau server for each department or each team which is working together in an organization. The sandbox area allows all users to share the results of their analysis by publishing content into the sandbox area. Therefore, all these users which create content either in Tableau Desktop or in WebEdit can publish content into this project and have read and write access to this area. The more governed area is the standard or production area. Most users have only read permissions and only view users can move workbooks into this area. That means performing this content promotion process. The majority of our customers, including, by the way, us on Alpo, are implementing this separation using Tableau server projects or Tableau server folders, rather than using, for example, different sites for this content separation process. This has the big advantage when content will not be isolated across different Tableau server sites, but it remains reusable within the entire site and within the entire analytics process. If you look at the typical roles that are included in this process, a process can look like the following. The data steward, and we will talk about this process in detail later when we talk about the data strategy, and the data steward, for me personally and from my experience, is one of the most important roles in this entire process, is setting up the initial connections to the data sources, and he's building the metadata model. So he's the interface role between business and IT. The data steward is asking the business, what is the data you need for your daily analysis? What data do you need to be successful in your business? And then the data steward refers back to IT and tries to figure out and tries to design and build a solution to make this happen. And that means that we need to make the data available in the right format, in the right quality, but also with the right performance. Performance is one of the big success factors for self-service analytics. I worked before Tableau with a reporting tool, and it was not unusual that we had to wait minutes, I wouldn't say hours, but minutes, to get a result on our report. That is not longer valid in the context of visual analytics. When we look at our private experience working in the World Wide Web, we expect responses immediately. And this is true in the same way for our data sources in the visual analytics context. Now, as the data steward run through this process, and within Tableau he built these famous published data sources, he is then publishing these data sources into the data source project. And then we have our business users, our analysts. They are having either Tableau desktop or using our web edit capability in order to perform their own analysis, in order to ask questions to the data. And if this is just an ad hoc request, an ad hoc analysis, this result can then easily be saved in the sandbox project. If we find out during the auditing, during monitoring the success of this content, we might identify exactly this workbook as a candidate to be promoted to our production area. When someone with the capability, maybe a project leader, has the permissions to promote this workbook into the production area. Our consumers or editors were having access, read access to content that's living in the sandbox project or that's also living in the production project. And the most important piece when we talk about the cultural change that makes Tableau in organizations is that consumers not necessarily need to remain as pure end users. With our web edit capability, you can start step by step bringing even business users into the direction that they can start performing self-service by not just building their own analysis. They may just open and edit an existing workbook, make their own changes, and then they can also save these kind of results when in the sandbox. But please mind the cleanup. As human beings, we tend to keep everything what we ever created, especially in the sandbox. We don't like manual cleanup because we think it's just a waste of time. Therefore, we definitely recommend to consider automatic housekeeping scripts if you want to avoid that your Tableau server content is exploding at some point. And we definitely have tools and APIs that you can use in order to build and develop such an housekeeping process. I worked with a lot of customers. The important question to answer is always the interval, yeah? Go I for a 30 days interval or do I go for a 60 or 90 days interval? Because, yeah, the Tableau users are always a bit shocked that their content is not longer available, even if they didn't touch it over the last weeks, I would say. That's why a possible solution that many customers use is that they build such a script that is checking the data that's available in the repository database via identifying workbooks that have been published more than 30 days or 60 days ago, and then please send an email to the owner that his content will be deleted soon. And another backup can be that you build a recycle bin project where you put the workbooks into, and after a while, when these recycle bin workbooks are also removed completely from Tableau server. When we talk about governance, of course, we have to talk about security and auditing as well. And there are a couple of points to consider. Florian touched it already during his introduction. The first point that I want to have control of as a platform administrator, I want to control who has access to my platform, yeah? And that's what we call the authentication. We need to make a decision especially when we are planning an IT service with Tableau, yeah? Of course, Tableau server, the installation package and the platform, or let's say the application is designed that somebody can simply install it and is using local authentication and finishes the installation after 45 minutes and he's done. He even doesn't need to consider about any permission rules, he can just use it, yeah? But the purpose of Tableau server, and this is the purpose also part of this presentation today, we want to make it as a proper service. We want to install it as a proper IT service. And of course, in this case, we need to consider more options. We need to consider, can I either use a local authentication, or can I leverage my LDAP on Windows Server? It would be the Active Directory. The question is, and that's the golden question, I recommend to all of you, if you start that journey, what is the total amount of users? Do all my users are existing in the Active Directory? Then I can go ahead with Active Directory user management. If I have users outside my organization, unfortunately, then we have to go for local authentication. But of course, we have additional questions to ask. Do we have any single sign-on technology existing in our organization? Are we using Kerberos for single sign-on for databases, for whatever application? Do we have a SAML IDP that we can use in order to authenticate users on Tableau server? Or are we using OpenID that comes from Google? Yeah? So these are all questions you need to consider as part of your planning process for the platform. The next question is, once the user got access to the application, we need to talk about authorization. Tableau server doesn't mean that everybody has access to any content. Of course, we are working in teams. And Tableau server provides us the option to either separate users in different sites, so that's a really isolation level that we know from Tableau Online, for example, or if we can keep the users in one site, we separate them by projects. And when we do this, we need to think about different user roles. I touched already and talked about the data steward, the consumer role, the analyst role. These are all the roles that we can configure and we can set up with user capabilities on Tableau server in order to properly build our authorization concept. Last but not least, data security. If I have a team of 20, 30, 50, 100 users that are all having access to the same dashboard, typical example I had in the past a lot of times is a sales dashboard. Yeah, not every Salesforce should see the data from his colleague. Yeah, that's why we have this one sales dashboard where people have access to their data. Yeah, and the managers have an overview of the team. And with Tableau server, we have two options in order to implement this. We can either implement the data security within the database, or we can implement it on Tableau server in our metadata model, in our Tableau data source model by using, for example, the user filter method. When all these things are possible and are part of the governance concept to consider when building this IT service with Tableau. Florian already talked a lot about the auditing options we have. You will find already a lot of information in the repository database, and please, please, the built-in admin views are just a starting point. The big party starts when you start connecting to the repository database on your own. And we have a well-documented data model, leverage it. And I've seen a lot of great examples when I went to customers, how they used this information in order to keep track of the success of your platform. Yeah? How many users are connecting to my application? Because a total number of users on Tableau server isn't really an indication for the success of your platform. Fine, I have 10,000 of users on my Tableau server, but does it mean that I'm successful? That's not the right indicator. Success KPIs are, how often do people connect to my Tableau server platform? How often do people use this specific workbook? How often do they connect with this data source, to this data source? Yeah? These are KPIs to measure success for your platform. And last but not least, if repository isn't enough, additional information also to troubleshoot or to get more information, for example, about the execution steps when a dashboard was executed, you will find in LogShark. And LogShark is a perfect tool for business people who don't like to read JSON format. All this information is available in log files. There might be people who love to read JSON, but LogShark translates it into a human reading format, and you can connect then after this LogShark process to a Postgres database and can analyze your data in the same way how you can analyze any other database. A last part of governance is, of course, license management. Of course, if you are a Tableau customer, you have your customer portal in order to see which user has which license on Tableau Desktop. Or you have your core license, for example. But if you want to keep track more in detail about your Tableau server users, for example, and see how often do they connect it, do they really utilize this license, then all the information is available either in the Tableau server GUI already, where you see these are the users with the side roles, with our new licensing roles, and when did they last sign in. But you can also, again, leverage your repository database in order to build reports on that, in order to keep track and get daily informed about the usage of your Tableau server. Same for Tableau Desktop. That's a bit a hidden feature. You can configure your Tableau Desktop installation that it gives a call to Tableau server on a regular basis in order to see that the Tableau Desktop is also used and that you keep track also on your Tableau Desktop licenses. Another key aspect in a Tableau project is data governance. Working with many customers in the past nearly 4 years, I heard many great examples of why it is so important to set up a proper data strategy. We want to give the data into the hand of the business users. But think about a user who never connected to a database and who does not ever heard about joins or unions. Wouldn't it be great if we can provide this user with a predefined semantic layer where all work has been already done? Of course it would be, and we have it. It's data server. So data server allows us to build and define Tableau data sources and share it across the entire Tableau server. What happens, I touched it already a bit before when I talked about the data steward role. So the data steward is the guy or the lady who is responsible to build these central managed data sources. The data steward is connecting to the database. He is taking care about the right join conditions, yeah? So that means he can work very close with the database team to identify what is the right setup of a database model to have a well-performing database model. Then, during his ongoing task of building this metadata model, by the way, we are also having metadata in Tableau, yeah? We don't have a separate tool yet. Tableau Prep is some kind of a bit of that, but we're talking also about metadata in the context of Tableau. And that means I transform a very technical IT database model into a business model that is optimized and predefined for the usage of business users. And this means that the modeler of this data source model, he can simply hide technical columns that are not in use. He can rename the columns so that it's business user friendly. He can build hierarchies, he can put database table or database columns into folders. Again, all this activity with the purpose to make it as easy as possible for the end user to really focus on his daily job to analyze his data. But having published data sources and using data server has also other big advantages. For example, we don't need to take care about database drivers. If the connection to the database is also always performed via Tableau server, then we don't need to install the database drivers on the user side. The data steward also makes the decision either to use live connections or to use extracts. that's not longer in the hand of a business user. The data steward can make this decision. And with this central managed data extract process, you also have the advantage that not the same data is loaded and extracted from the data 10 times. So with using the data server functionality, we can really optimize the entire cycle and the entire process. Data server further allows to audit the success and the relevance of data to the business. That's not possible if you perform a direct connection with Tableau Desktop. The repository database tells us how many workbooks are connected to a data source and how often users access the data source in a defined time interval. And I remember on a keynote, a customer last year in Las Vegas told that they are using this information also to track how popular databases in the sandbox area are, in order to make them also as productive and governed data sources. And what about the question of reliability? Many business users struggle to build their own data model, like I said before, as they don't care about crazy things like joins and unions. Data server allows us to pre-build, optimize, and test data models and document them. Analysts can then focus on their profession to ask questions to the data rather than worrying about the right join criteria. And the last question in this context, where to publish your data source? And this is fitting to the model I explained before. We touched already the separation in the content of sandbox workbooks and production workbooks. In this setup, we typically add a data source project where the data steward is the project leader and all the data sources are living in the data source project, and throughout the entire process, either you have a productive workbook that connects to a data source living in this data source project, or another sandbox workbook, they all connect to the same data source, and you can centrally manage your data source and keep this completely separate from your workbooks.
When we have all the process in place, let's say in the beginning they all are manual process. You know exactly who is supposed to access the platform. You know exactly how you're going to publish the content, how you're going to migrate the content from one site to another one. Tableau is offering, once again, a lot of flexibility in terms of how many tools you can use to automate all this process, in terms of how to put in place governance, how to add automatically assign this user to groups. On the left-hand side, you have 4 different tools or APIs you can leverage on to automate the process. The goal is really to make sure that you will make life of IT stakeholder within your company easier by leveraging all these tools to be able to speed up the process, to be responsive of any type of process you want to manage. So, and on the right-hand side, you have the different capabilities as all the different tools and API are going to support. I'm going to need your help to match everything together. Is there anybody in the room who have experience with tools of APIs to automate process? Let's talk about the first one. Modify Tableau files, TDS, X, TWB, TWBX. Which tools or API can you use to modify? Right answer. What about enabling access to work with your content, user, group, site via HTTP? Which API could you use to do that? Are you sure? That's correct. Create custom scripts that pull your data and put all your data you need into data extract. Which one? Only 2 remaining. So, good answer. Extract API. And finally, to perform administrative tasks.
I know this. I know this. Yeah.
And the final one, to perform administrative tasks and change Tableau server configuration settings. Come on.
I know this.
It's easy now. Thank you. Scripting using tab command and tab admin command lines. These are all the tools you can leverage on to automate all the process you discuss and agree with the business. Another example using Tableau Server Client, which is basically a Python library you can use as accelerator when you are using Tableau Server REST API. Let's say you have a long list of different users and you want to automatically add this user within Tableau Server and assign each user a specific group. You have the chance to create a Python script where you will pull all the information from the CSV input file and automatically add the user to the Tableau server and assign the different user to the groups that are already in the Tableau server. So the output will be adding user and assigning user to specific group in the Tableau server.
Congratulations, you successfully covered already the majority of this session. We are now coming to the most popular part of this presentation, but please consider not to make any buy decision based on what you see now. It's not released yet. But I'm very excited. And when I say very excited, I mean excited, because when I saw it in January in Seattle, I had tears in my eyes, that Tableau Services Manager will be available for Tableau Server on Linux and on Windows very soon. And I think Tableau Services Manager will be a breakthrough from a visual perspective already, yeah? So I think we will all miss the old Windows window for Tableau Server configuration. With the TSM, this will be much more beautiful, and the configuration process and the installation process will be amazing. But it's not only the beauty of TSM, it's also a very great benefit for our Tableau Server admins, that in order to perform basic administrations or configuration tasks on Tableau Server, you don't need to RDP to the Tableau Server itself. You can do this via the web GUI. The next thing is, it's not at the end, yeah? There is another thing. With Tableau Services Manager, we will start including hot topology changes on Tableau Server. Wouldn't it be great if we can perform adjustments on our topology configuration? That means the number of processes that we configure while Tableau Server is running. We don't need to stop and start the service. We can just do it while Tableau Server is running. And with the first release of the TSM for Windows, we will be able to perform these changes for the backgrounder process and for the SQL Server process. Unfortunately, for those of you who need to administrate a 24-hour application, because all people worldwide are working with Tableau Server, it will be challenging. But for those of you, you have a clear daily interactive usage and nightly backgrounder usage, that's perfect, because you can adjust the configuration during the day to increase the number of your backgrounder processes during the night in order to be able to run through more quickly with your backgrounder jobs, like extract refresh tasks or subscriptions or with alerts. And during the day, where you want to give the users, the interactive users, the best performance they can get on Tableau Server, you configure and reduce the number of backgrounders, and you increase the number of SQL Server processes. So this will be available very soon, and I'm pretty sure we will hear in the keynote from François this afternoon more about this as well. At this point, I want to thank you all very much for attending our presentation at TC Europe in London this year. I hope we were able to make it clear to you what self-service analytics means in Tableau's world. We further talked about the tool set required to set up Tableau as a proper IT service in your organization and running the Tableau platform with confidence and being ready to scale. That's important. Don't let it run on its own. Run it with confidence, monitor, so that you are ready to scale early. We showed you a large real-world deployment with our Alpo deployment. And I hope we were further able to provide you with some useful hints on common traps that you should avoid on your Tableau journey. Before we come to the QA, I would kindly ask you to complete the session survey from the session details screen in your TC Europe 2018 app. This will help us to further improve our sessions in the future. Thank you very much. And now it's time for Q&A. Okay, should we start here?
Yes, I have a question about the APIs.
Yes.
If you do automation with APIs, you have some events, you have workflow, orchestration, scheduling. How do you see this? Do you see this within Tableau or outside Tableau?
So the question was, if we build and implement API applications, how all the job handling will be handled. If this is something that we can do inside Tableau or outside Tableau, and the clear answer that it's completely outside Tableau. Yeah. So we don't have. I'm thinking, for example, about a sync script. Yeah, to say that you want to match the data that lives in an IDM with the Tableau server. Yeah, and you want to run this script on a regular basis, and you clearly need to use external tools in order to trigger this. Yeah. Okay. This was my next question. So the question was about what are recommendations from us with regard to upgrades, and also if we have any tools in order to automate tests. So the recommendation about an upgrade recommendation is an interesting question. If you have a small platform, of course, it's much easier to make this decision to upgrade to a new version, because you have less users to consider. Yeah. And of course, if you increase and build a platform with thousands of users, you need to consider more teams to include them in the test process. Yeah. Of course, our general recommendation from Tableau is always to try to install the latest version, because this already includes a lot of fixes. Yeah. And as Florian mentioned during the presentation, also performance improvements. Yeah. But in some cases, you might check if you think, for example, about the 10.4, 10.5 migration. Yeah, we had users or we had customers who remained in a 10.4 version before they did the big bang to the 10.5. So that's hard to give a general recommendation. Yeah, it's something you really need to decide from situation to situation. But to answer your question about automation tools, I recommend my customers to consider Tabjolt. So after the session today, you definitely know Tabjolt. And you know that the primary purpose of Tabjolt is to perform load tests. But you can also use Tabjolt in order to perform a technical test during the upgrade process. Yeah? So that means if you install the new version on your technical sandbox and you want to test the workbooks if everything is still working properly, yeah, you can use Tabjolt as a first indication to set up an automation process, yeah, that you see if all workbooks run successfully, then of course you know you have an indication that everything works fine. I wouldn't keep this as the only test, but it's a first indication, yeah. Yeah.
So you showed the data server and data steward approach.
Yeah.
So what crossed my mind there was like, is there a way, or do you have a best practice how to document about the measures that are in there and the dimensions and everything? So because you provide a data source, and therefore you should also provide the definitions of the stuff that's in there. Is there a way to do it somehow?
So it's a good question. The question was if there is a way of documenting the items or the data items that are in the Tableau data source. I personally, and I saw this with a lot of customers, documenting this in the TDS with using the descriptions. Yeah, because you know you can add these default properties. Yeah, and part of that is the comments. Yeah, and I definitely recommend to put as much as possible investment in documenting this, because this is really helping also the end user to know what is behind that, especially with calculations, for example. Yeah,
and it is really one of the role and responsibility of the role we call data steward, a person that will understand both worlds, data world, but as a business world to help the business to document properly, to make sure if someone is not working today, you still have someone who can hand over and get the work done. So all this documentation, it's really something important for us, and data steward duty. Yeah.
Yeah. Laura? I repeat the question when I answer this question, hopefully properly. So the question was that last year on the roadmap, our product management presented the new capability of having statistical results about the usage of workbooks. The question, to answer the question, the final question, if it's still on the roadmap, my answer is I hope so, because I'm definitely waiting for that, but I would like to refer to the afternoon session where François talks about the roadmap. Yeah. So I think we are done with the time. Yeah. Thank you very much, and
Thanks a lot for your time.
and enjoy the TC. Thank you.